This is my story. My name is Brian Hall. I'm married to Shannon. We have two boys, Holden, who's a senior, and Davis, who's a freshman, both at Statesboro High. I've been a teacher for 22 years and a coach for about 27 years. We moved back to Statesboro in 2006 and started attending Grace shortly thereafter. My parents divorced when I was very young, and I lived with my mom. This was very impactful to me in my childhood and kind of set the tone for very low expectations for marriage. She remarried when I was about 8. We would go to church occasionally, but became a little more consistent when I was in high school. I would hear about Jesus some on Sundays, but it wasn't something that we would talk about much during the week. There was not a one-time event or a day that I would say that I decided to follow Jesus. I think it was more of a slow process or journey for me. My brother, who is 5 years older, was a good role model for me. He began growing in his faith when he was in college and got married shortly thereafter. Their marriage has been a great example for Shannon and I. Many years ago, we started a small group here at Grace made of mostly young coaches because we thought that God could use us like my brother did for us. We had now been meeting for about 14 years. We thought we were going to help others, but it's been such a blessing to us to be able to grow and do life with this group. Our families have kind of all grown up together. I feel like God continued to pursue me while I was in college. I was a science major in college, and I remember questioning some of the answers that science came up with to explain nature and the human body. Some of those answers just didn't add up to me. And the more I studied and read, and the more my faith grew in God and my relationship with Him grew, which I am still learning how to grow that relationship even today. In my first teaching job, they needed someone to be in charge of FCA and asked if I would do it. Looking back, I think that was God pursuing me and knowing what was best for me. Being on my own for the first time in my life, heading FCA, kept me growing and pursuing a relationship. I've been lucky enough that I've moved to 3 different schools since then, and every time when I got there, someone came and asked if I would be willing to do FCA because they needed somebody else. During that first year at my school at church one Sunday, I heard a verse that had a huge impact on me, which was Ephesians 5:25, which is about husbands should love their wives as Christ loves the church. I had not ever really seen that, but it told me how I could do marriage and make it work. Shannon and I got married in the next year, and we're living in North Carolina. Those of you that know Shannon, she is tremendous, and marriages turned out to be way better than I'd ever imagined. We bought our first home, found a church, and we're active in a small group. We decided we wanted to start a family and got pregnant pretty quickly, but quickly had a miscarriage. We were heartbroken, but we both knew we wanted to be parents. Over the next year, we had 2 more miscarriages. We were sent to a specialist that helped us to stay pregnant. Shannon had to give herself shots every day, but thankfully we were blessed with Holden. By this time, we had moved to the Outer Banks, and I got my first head coaching job. And as a young coach, winning was very important to me, probably too important. There were definitely times where coaching and winning were put on a very high pedestal. My first year as a head basketball coach, we were in the 3rd round of the state playoffs and lost a very close game on a Saturday. If we would have won, we would have advanced to the regionals and played on the East Carolina campus, and it was a very big deal for our school. Obviously, I was disappointed, probably moped around the house that Sunday. Holden was about 4 months old at the time and had been throwing up some when he ate, but other than that, he seemed healthy and hadn't lost any weight, but Shannon kind of knew something wasn't right. He'd already been going to the doctor a little bit. But that Sunday night, he wasn't doing great, so we took him to the emergency room, and his pulse ox read 69, which, should be in the 90s. But the nurse said not to worry, that couldn't be right. But after a couple of days and some more tests, they figured out that it was right. He got life flighted to a medical center in Chapel Hill. We were there for a few days when he began to crash, and they put him on 2 ventilators for about a week. We ended up staying for a total of 6 weeks and went home on oxygen and a feeding tube for a few more months, but he recovered and is healthy today. They just said he couldn't be a scuba diver. But I remember when he started crashing, and there were doctors and nurses flying around that little hospital room, and they told us to leave. And by the time Shannon and I got to the waiting room, obviously we were crying, and probably the lowest point of my life. And there was a pastor that we didn't know was there at the time. He had come when we were in the back. He just kind of got us and began praying. And even though it was the lowest point ever, I just remember the peace that I had after he prayed. Like, I can't really put it into words, but it was just a peace. Even though there was still some very hard times to come. But later that week, I remember sitting in the hospital, and the news came on about who won the regionals, and thinking about how little that really meant at that time, which really made me focus on being a better parent and a better husband. It also helped me in coaching to not worry about just wins and losses, and to get to know my players and be there for them, many of whom did not have fathers at home. And looking back, I can really see how God used that very difficult time in my life to mold me and help change me for the better. In 2006, we moved back to Statesboro, and I was coaching in Metter. Holden had just turned 2, and we joined Grace, and we're part of a small group, startup small group that following spring. We decided to try for another child, and we're excited, and immediately had 2 more miscarriages. We were sent to another specialist where they told us that what we had done before in North Carolina should never have worked. And after some tests, they were like, "You're not going to be able to have a healthy baby. You got one. Be thankful." Which we definitely struggled with that, but I was thankful we had Holden. Shannon wasn't satisfied, and just continued to pray and pray and pray. And eventually, God changed my heart, and we convinced the doctor to let us try what we had done in North Carolina, even though he didn't think it would work. And it did work, and we had our second miracle baby boy in Davis. I think my faith has given me a peace in life. It is such a relief to me to be able to live and know that I'm not in charge. Jesus is. Life is full of what we see as ups and downs, but he will always find a way to use those ups and downs, even if we don't understand it at the time. He loves me every day, no matter how bad I mess up. And that is an incredible feeling to me, to know that I am loved unconditionally. Knowing that he is in charge and that he has something special planned for me in eternity is just a calming peace for my life. Thank you.